Today I want to share from the life of my great-great-grandmother, Saveria Comito Morello. She was born in the year 1881 in Matopione, Catanzaro, Calabria, Italy. And I am thankful for her life, and this is a little bit more about who she was and how I came to be through her. Saveria was born to parents Alfonso Comito and Maria Caterina Umbrello. Saveria had about 6 siblings. There may be a 7th that I'm not sure about, but of the 6 that I am sure about, their names were Antonio Comito, Francesco Comito, Giuseppe Comito, Vincenzo Comito, aka James, Maria Filomeno Comito, and Maria Angela Comito. And they all come from southern Italy. Saveria, aka Sarah, came to the United States in 1905. She came at a time when it was in style for people to come to the United States for labor purposes and also to have freedom from their countries, or freedom from the destitute situations in their countries, or persecution, or what have you. But Sarah, she came to the United States in 1905. She also came in 1907. So there was this back and forth tourism for work. When she came, she was working as a servant. She was about 24 to 26 years old when she came to the United States. She met her husband around that time, and then she married him and started having children. The first child was Frank James Morello. Now, as you'll note, I did just mention those 2 names. Francesco Comito, her older brother, was actually aka Frank Comito, and then her other brother, Vincenzo James Comito. Those names are the names. She combined those 2 names to get her son's name, Frank James Morello. And then she would continue to have children with her husband, Giovanni Morello. They're both from southern Italy. Her second child was Anna Morello, who married a Pepe. Then her third child was Mary Morello, who married Arthur Manassian, an Armenian. And then her fourth child was Constantina Morello, who married another Italian, a Torelli. And Joseph Alfonso Morello was her 5th child. He was the first of the Joseph Morellos. And her 6th child was my great-grandfather, John Morello, who was named after his father, who had an AKA John, but his full name was Giovanni Morello. So Giovanni Morello went by John, and he had a son, John, which was my great-grandfather. Ends up being John Jr. And then the last born was Rita Morello. She married Alla Presti. And this is the family. As you'll note, Constantina was a name that I mentioned as one of the middle children. Constantina is an interesting name because there are 2 Constantinas in the genealogy before her. Her father, Giovanni Morello, had 2 sisters with the name Constantina Morello. One died in 1894, just 3 years after Giovanni Morello was born, and the other was born 1 year after that. So there was a second child that was born, that was a girl, that was also named Constantina. So there were 2 Constantinas that were probably died young, and so that name was brought back up in the genealogy and honored and passed down. But back to the story of Sarah. Her husband, again, you'll remember, is Giovanni Morello. He opened a grocery store in Philly, and she helped him there in the grocery store. The family, it was a family business, so it was in the Italian section of Philadelphia. So that store really served the Italian community and served the people that they knew, that they felt comfortable with. Reviewing the ship manifest, it actually states her height, so you can get a better understanding of Sarah and who she was. It says she was 5 feet 2 inches tall, and it asked her where she was going to be staying. It said she was going to be staying in Reading, Pennsylvania, and she was going to be staying with her brother, Francesco Comito, aka Frank. And so a little later on, we find out in news clippings that Frank got into some trouble in Reading, Pennsylvania. He was caught up in the law with the Prohibition era. And so at this time, he was actually involved with the possession of intoxicating liquors. That's what they call it. So, or at least how it was worded in the news article. And so because of that possession of intoxicating liquors, he was arrested and convicted of that crime. No further details on him. One thing that I noticed that was of interest was that my great-grandfather, John Morello Jr., was born in the year 1922, and that's the same year that Mussolini took power in Italy. So it just gives you a backdrop of what's happening at the same time that my ancestors are being born or migrating over to the U.S. And so it just makes me remember the history and to know that, you know, I'm grateful that my family made it to the U.S. and actually was on this side during that time that was very tough in Italy. And so a little later on in life, my great-grandfather, at the age of about 23 years old, has his first child. My grandmother, her name was Gina, and she was born in 1945, and she is the mother of my father, Anthony. And so this is the history of my Southern Italian family.